I'm Marion. I'm from Canada. I work in Bangladesh as the head of sustainability for Olympic Industries Limited. We are the largest biscuit manufacturer in Bangladesh. Has anyone been to Bangladesh here? Raise your hand. Very good. Is anyone from Bangladesh? Okay. If you are from Bangladesh, you'll have heard of Olympic, but outside you have not. What's unusual about Olympic, it's a local company, and yet we do quite a bit of CSR. And what I'd like to talk about today is how CSR has actually made us a more sustainable company. We have a lot of projects. I'll talk about 3 and how they've informed our sustainability. Does anyone work in frontier markets here? Anyone know a frontier market? Less developed than India. No one? Okay. Well, I'll talk a little bit about frontier markets and what they imply for CSR. First of all, in frontier markets, CSR is investor-led. That means that the demand for what we do in terms of CSR is a little bit different, depending on how much we care about or what our investors think. Secondly, it's led by the law. Now, here in India, you have the Companies Act. In Bangladesh, we have the Bangladesh Bank regulation for CSR. That's only applicable to banks, but soon there will be a CSR guideline that will be applicable to all companies. That can be exciting because it means that more people will do CSR, but it can also be worrisome because it dictates how we do CSR, and that's not always realistic. So we don't know what's in the law, but we know that it's going to be very influential on how we do CSR. Another thing about CSR in frontier markets, it is not consumer-led. In most developed countries, it is. Consumers care, and usually that puts pressure on a company. Not in frontier markets. They have a lot of other concerns, our consumers, mainly their own needs. And so that shapes the way we do CSR. Another thing that does is the customers themselves, bottom of the pyramid, poor customers. That shapes the way we do CSR because it influences our stakeholders. Our stakeholders are our workers and our consumers, whereas that might not be considered as a stakeholder in other companies. And climate change. Climate change is huge for frontier markets. We are the most affected by climate change, especially in Bangladesh. And that gives us an imperative to address that in terms of CSR, but especially in terms of sustainability. So there is a huge need for development in frontier markets, which makes it all the more important and all the more essential that we do CSR. It creates a lot of opportunities because of lack of services. We can create those services. But there's a lot of challenges as well. Companies have to address sustainability as a survival issue, not just in order to be a good citizen. Okay. So the way I see CSR versus sustainability is this. Philanthropy, we all know, donations and mostly writing a check. CSR, however, is really about managing risk. It's about managing risk and managing impact. How you affect your stakeholders, making sure that the impact is positive. Sustainability, however, I would define as a means for survival. And what I mean by that is that really you have to address sustainability if you want to be able to operate in a long-term basis. It requires a huge engagement with stakeholders. And so today what I really want to drive as a point is that CSR is usually seen as a result of a learning process and a desire to do good for our stakeholders. That's true, and we at Olympic believe that. But it also is a need and something the company can do to learn and benefit from. We can learn lessons that we wouldn't have learned otherwise just because we do CSR. I've found in my work that implementing CSR project has led me to understand the company's sustainability needs. Through gathering data on stakeholders and starting projects that are intended to good at the start, we discovered new ways of lowering our risk, of providing services where there's scarcity, and adapting to the local constraints. That will surely help us for sustainability. Here are a few projects we learned from. you see it properly? Okay. First, when we started assessing our CSR needs and building a CSR framework, we realized that that our HR didn't actually know the law as well as we thought that they did. This is a huge risk. You want your HR to be very well aware of especially the labor law. And perhaps it was a fear of telling us that, you know, madam, we haven't really been trained on this, or perhaps it's that they don't feel that it's that important. Either way, this is something that we needed to address in terms of compliance, and compliance is a huge part of sustainability. We also found the need for an HR portal to gather more data on our workers, especially in terms of payroll, injuries, things that we didn't realize we didn't have proper data on. Finally, we realized that we lacked certain policies that would make our lives easier and that would please our stakeholders like our investors. So we knew that we had mechanisms in place, but actual policies that needed to be written down and made transparent. We found that out through trying, just even discussing CSR, the idea of engaging in CSR.